Hi, I'm John Underhill. Welcome back to Underhill Creations and Casting Solutions. I'm in the shop today working on some pen blanks for a friend of mine, and I thought I'd get the camera out and shoot a video and share it with you. So today I'm working with Shark Vertebrae. And this isn't anything new. It's been out for years. Most of us pen makers have been doing this stuff forever. But I want to share with you my process because it might be a little different than the way somebody else is doing it. And if you want to get into this, you should watch as many videos as you can and figure out which one you like or which process works best for you. So here's how I start. When you purchase these, and I find these online, just Google Shark Vertebrae. It's hit or miss what times of the year you're going to find them. But as you get them, they're going to be all hopefully clean, nice and dry, like these. But the problem is, sometimes you get them and they're broke. They're very brittle, or can be, depending on how clean or dry they are. So a lot of times you can take some CA, and once you find the right pieces, you can hold them together and put a drop of CA on each side, like this. And I do this towards the center. I don't do this towards the outer edge because I don't want to fill these grooves full of glue. But I'll just put it around the center there where I know I'm going to drill through with my drill bit. And then take a little bit of accelerator. And I'm using Glue Boost Thin, the green. It's non-flexible, so it'll work really well with the resin. And then you let that set up, and now you've got your piece back together. Once you turn this down, you're not going to see that there was a crack because you have all of this character. And this is what you're going to see around the front. So what I like to do next is sort these out based on size. And so I've kind of done that. I've got all these that are very similar in size. And I'm going to start by stacking them up. And if I was going to make a Sierra pen blank like this, I'm going to start with my brass tube. So I have to kind of figure out, based on my size, how I'm going to stack these up. And I'll stack them up in a manner that maybe the end ones are a little smaller because that's where my bushings meet. And I always turn my pen blanks, my Sierra blanks, with a little bit of a taper. So I'm going to try to pick the maybe a hair smaller on the ends. But I stand that next to my pen blank, my tube, so I know that's the size I need based on my tube length. So now what I'm going to do is take these over to the drill press and prep them for gluing together. I know you're thinking, you said drill press to prep these to glue together? That's exactly it. So here's what I like to do. Because we're going to stack these up in layers, I have to get resin in a lot of these small crevices. So I want to give that air an easy escape while I allow resin to get in. So here's what I like to do. I take a 1/4 inch drill bit, and you can use something smaller. But what I'll do is, for me, I feel a 7mm or a 1/4 inch is going to work just fine because I'm going to drill a larger hole when I put my pen tubes in this. All right, the Sierra is a little larger. So I'm going to drill a hole right in the middle. And this is the one we glue back together. So I know now when I stack all of these up, I'm going to line up my hole and I'm going to pour resin in the middle, and it's going to allow air. Sometimes in this one, not all of these crevices are exposed, but a few of them are. So it's going to give air just an easier way to escape. But it also allows me to glue these up and stack them in a manner that now I know when these are stacked, resin's going to get in this area because I may expose that when I turn this down. And I don't want an air pocket in there. So if I drill a hole through all of them, resin gets inside and fills those inner cavities and just helps hold everything together. Alright, so once you have them all drilled out and you've got them stacked or layered in the position that you want them, what I do is I'll take my thin CA and I will hold these together. And I'll position them where I want them. And sometimes you might want to turn them. One of the big things is you want to make sure that you're fairly straight up and down and centered on those holes. By drilling the holes in the center of the disc, it's easy for me to look down the hole and make sure that I'm lined up. You could also take a 1/4 inch sized dowel rod if you wanted and insert in there to just kind of help hold everything straight as you glue it. Once you get everything lined where you want, then I come in here with a little bit of CA, and I only do it in 2 points. I'll put a little bit on the outer edge, and then mist my glue dry, and then I'll spin it around, and I'll find 2 points that are touching on the backside, like right here. And you also notice I'm using the tip extender because it allows me to just put a little bit on there. I'm not flooding the area. I don't want to fill all these gaps because then resin can't get in there. Now I know I've got the length I need. I'm just beyond my tube that I'm going to cast. I'm going to let that sit for probably 12 to 24 hours depending on how much time I have, but for these I'm going to let them sit overnight. I'm going to let that glue degas so that the fumes and vapors in the glue as it cures doesn't affect my resin. But because I'm using a colored resin, I'm not as concerned. I just want to make sure that the glue's cured enough that the resin isn't going to break the bond as it heats up and solidifies. Alright, so here's what we're going to do now. We've allowed these to dry overnight. Everything is nice and secure. Now we're going to cut the casting tubes above the height of these because I want to be able to put extra resin in. That way when we put it under pressure and the air compresses, that resin volume is going to drop, and it's going to allow us to have enough resin over the top of this blank. I'd rather have too much and trim it off than have it settle somewhere down in here. So what I'm using, the 7/8 clear tubes from my casting system at Exotic Blanks, my vertical system, and we're going to look at this and we're just going to round it up. Again, I'd rather have these longer. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these bottom caps. I'm going to make sure that I have a nice flat surface. Blow any debris out of them. Push them caps on, and those are going to sit in the rack. After you cut them, if you realize that maybe it isn't straight, you can always come in here and just trim off a little. And that's another advantage to cutting them longer than you really need them. Anything extra, we'll just cut off when we're done. So, next what we would do, we'll make sure that these fit inside. That drops in just how we want it. So, this way it's a little loose. It drops in very easily, but what it's going to do is it's going to allow resin to get in around the edges and get into all these little grooves and holes. If it were too tight, see like this one, it's a little snug. The problem with that is we may have a problem getting resin down over some of these. Now it'll go through the middle of the tube and filter up, but I really like it to be able to get down the sides because if it's really tight right here, we might leave some air pockets. So what I'm going to do, take a piece of sandpaper. I'm going to figure out where my high points are. I'm not going to get real aggressive with this. I want to be very gentle not to break these apart, but I'm just going to kind of roll them back and forth and work on them high spots. You'd be surprised how quickly these come down. You don't need to remove a lot to create that little bit of a gap. Yeah, I can see right there, that top one. And I've got some, I believe it's 80 grit here. No, I think I'm sorry, 180. You don't want anything too aggressive because then these will crumble, but it's got to be aggressive enough, coarse enough that it'll sand off some. So obviously I could take it to my belt sander, but I'm afraid that would be too aggressive, and I don't want to break these. So there. Now it drops in nice and easy, so I know I can get resin around all those parts. Now, if these vertebrae were too big and wouldn't fit in my tube, another option would be a pill bottle. So think about that when you're throwing your prescription bottles away. If you don't have a casting rack, they make great molds for especially the single tube. So if you were going to do a junior set, you would need 2 of them. In this case, this will be a Sierra, but I could also cast that in here. The downside is you're going to have to turn this away on the lathe in order to get to your blank. So just know that if you use one of these, it's a one-time mold. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish tubing the rest of these up, and I'm going to actually place these in a pressure pot and let them warm up for a little bit, and I'll show you how I do that. Alright, so what I have here, my pressure pot, it's a 2.5 gallon. Casting rack fits right down inside. I'm going to pull the clamps up, and I've got a shop clamp light. I went to the local farm mart and I bought a 125 watt light bulb. They use these for chicken coops and animals, things like that need to stay warm. I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to place this right over the top of the tank, and I'm going to let that shine in there for about 15 or 20 minutes. All I want to do is burn off humidity that may have settled on those and warm it up. Resin likes warm objects. Alright, so while those blanks are warming, we're going to measure out our resin. Because I'm using Alumilite Clear, I'm going to use equal parts of A and B. So I've got my cups marked A and B. You can see I was doing a lot of casting the last 2 days, and I marked my cups so I can keep reusing the same ones. So this is B. I'm going to guesstimate here. It's probably more than what I need, but we'll go with 225. I always add a little extra B, so I'm only going to go with 200 on A. We'll go 215 and 225. So I've got just a little extra B. Part of that is B is thicker, so it doesn't always come out of the cup as easily. So what I like to do is warm this up, because remember, we're trying to get that resin around all them little small spots and nooks and crannies, so I'm going to need my resin to be as thin as possible. It's a little cold, it's March, so here's what I like to do. Again, because my resin's kind of syrupy, I've got a 60 watt incandescent light bulbs generate heat. LED bulbs won't, so you can't use an LED bulb. I've had this bulb for a while, so when it burns out, I'm going to have to switch to the 125 from the farm supply. So what I'm going to do is just take a foil pan, lean over the top of that. It's going to kind of create a warm environment just to help that resin get a little bit thinner. I'm going to warm that up. Both of these resins should be the same temperature. Right now that's 57 degrees, which is great for storage, but for casting it's just too thick. So we're going to let this warm up, side B only, probably around 100 degrees. That way when the two mix, it's still going to leave me somewhere in the 70 degree range. So this will take about 10 minutes. I won't leave the shop, but I'm not going to make you sit and wait for it. Okay, our resin is done warming up. As you can see now, it's much thinner. Anytime I'm working with a clear urethane resin like Alumilite Clear or Clear Slow, I'll often warm side B. It just helps thin it down. If you get it too warm, let it sit for a few minutes and let the heat dissipate, and the temperature will drop, but you'll still keep that thin consistency for a while. I never warm side A because it's always thin anyhow. Alright, so now that we've got these warmed, and I'm at 83 degrees, that's good. Said it's nice and thin. Too hot, you'll kickstart your curing time, and you'll run out of time to get all the resin down in these spots. You want to pour it while it's still thin, yet you don't want it to get in there and get thick too quick before you can get it under pressure. So now I'm going to mix A to B. Normally I'll mix the thinnest resin, and although we warmed B up, I still feel that A is probably thinner. So we're going to pour it in the cup. And as you can see, as they mix together, it's like oil and water. Very, very filmy. I'm going to speed up my mixing time with a drill. As you can see, it will start to get clear as this mixes properly. I never add my colorants to it before I get it at least the majority of the way mixed, because I want to make sure I can see that everything is mixed properly. By using a drill, I'm not as concerned about my time as if I were using a stick. I'm trying to stay out of the way for you guys so you can see. Being right-handed and the camera on the right side isn't helping, but here's what we're going to use now. I'm going to use mica powders, and I've chosen Eye Candy Macaw Blue Green. I think that'll give it a nice look for that ocean that we're going for. I just use my measuring spoon. Now, I'm probably going to add a lot more than a lot of people do, but I want to make sure that it's dark or colored enough and not too transparent. What I've done, I've taken a spade bit for my drill and I broke the tip off and I've sanded all the edges so there's no sharp edges. That way it's just a paddle, a metal paddle, and it allows me to mix and get everything as I need it. And that way, once the bit gets too clouded up, if it's too crowded up, I can just throw it in some acetone. Alright, so if we were color casting, we'd have to wait for this to reach temperature, and usually around 95 to 100. But because we're basically shooting one color, we want to get it in the mold, we're going to do it at its thinnest state. And this is pretty thin. The temperature was 75 degrees, but it's nice and thin, so I know I'm going to be able to get those colors, or that resin, around all those spots that I need it. Also, I'm not using dye, the bottles of dye that we can get to color. I'm not going to use dye in this because I'm afraid the dye is going to actually transfer into my bone, and I don't want to discolor the bone. I just want to put color around it so when it's turned down you can still see it. Alright, so now I'm just going to come in here over the top and drizzle this right down that middle hole and then let it work its way around, and it's going to bubble and slowly work its way to the bottom. What you may also want to do is put this in your pressure pot and pressure it up, and that will force that resin down where you need it, and then finish filling the top. And I'll do that with objects sometimes that are a little difficult to get resin around. Put them under pressure. Because remember, this is still probably 78 degrees by now. So it's given us plenty of working time. As you can see, it's settling down. There's a few air bubbles in here, but these will all disappear once we put it under pressure. So by making these tubes bigger, taller than what I need, we'll be able to add more resin. That way, once the pressure pushes all them air bubbles down, my resin levels will drop, but it will still be over the top of the bones. So I think we're going to be just fine. I hope we're going to be just fine with that one. That one's a little tight in there. Let me pinch this a hair. There we go. I can see the air escaping. Now, if our resin were thick, we wouldn't be able to do this. And that's why I warm it up a little bit, because it allows me to manipulate. But again, once I put it under pressure, all of that's going to fix itself. So, because all of that air is going to compress, and the resin's going to fill anything left. So I'm going to put these in a tank, and I'm going to pour another mold with that I have on the side, and we'll let these cure for an hour and a half. I'm going to close the valve so when I put the air on, it doesn't blow all the resin out of those tubes. Alright, it's been an hour and a half. Now we can open this up. Alright, and there's our blanks. As you can see, everything filled like it should. Once that air crushed, the bubbles were crushed, all the resin was allowed to get in them voids. Alright, so here's our tubes. Some of these will pop right out. If they don't, I'll just take pliers and pull on them. And now these are ready for use again. As you can see, we can pretty much see the edge of our vertebrae along here. Even the thinner ones, they leave a little bit of a line the way the resin flows around it. So that makes it real helpful when we come in here and trim these off. But I'm going to let these sit for 24 hours before I do anything. It's important to let this resin cure fully. That way we don't damage the blanks if we turn them. So we want to make sure our resin reaches its full strength and curing potential. Well, that's how I do shark vertebrae. I hope it was clear enough for you. If you have any questions, please comment on the video, reach out to me, send me an email. I'm happy to hear from you. And if you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up. Let me know I'm doing something right. Happy turning and happy casting. I'm John. Thanks for stopping by.